Hello, everybody, and welcome to Molehill Mountain, episode 14. I think it
14,
is
yeah.
14. It's actually in the corner of my screen there. Um, as you may be able to tell from my voice and the fact that I did really not bother to brush my hair too carefully, I'm not feeling great. I haven't felt great for a couple days now, but I had an incredibly manly pink and orange antacid tablet right before the show. So I'm sure that will help with everything. Um, with me, of course, is Zachary Knight. Hello, Zachary.
Hello, Andrew. Did you play anything interesting this week?
Um,
Or were you too sick to play anything?
I'm kind of the sick. I'm not running a fever. I'm not. I don't have a sore throat or anything. I just have that overarching feeling of yuckiness
Yeah.
to the point where I just don't feel like doing anything. Like I could watch a movie. Like I don't want to play a video game because it's too much work. I just kind of want to sit and stare. And I could watch a movie, but that's really far. And I'd have to get a disc and put it in the player and turn. And that's like too much work. So I've been kind of oscillating between just reading stuff on the internet and then laying down and reading in my room and then getting up and coming back out here and sitting and reading the internet. I just kind of waffle back and forth.
Yeah.
But I did right before I got sick, and I gotcha. Um, I did something I discussed last week, which is a live review party of Ghostbusters, which came out in the theaters over a month ago. So I wasn't really worried about spoilers, but basically I did a live stream for about an hour and chatted about my thoughts on the film with the folks who came to watch. And it was a lot of fun, and I think the feedback I got was pretty positive, so I'll probably do more of those in the future. Um, uh, Probably any movie I do a live review party for, I might do a little bit closer to the actual release so that it's relevant. I mean, far enough from release to give people a chance to see it, but
Yeah.
not so far that no one cares anymore. Like next week or the week after, I'm thinking I might do Sausage Party because that's something I want to see. Although I really want to see Kubo and the Two Strings too. Um, but anyway, that's on my YouTube channel. If anyone wants to check it out, be warned, it's an hour long. But if you like the format, if you like, because what I did was I scooched over to the side and I copied the actual chat into the window. So if you watch it after the fact, you can actually keep track of what the chat is talking about.
Okay,
Um,
that's cool.
so I think that worked pretty nicely. Um, let's see. Jet Dan says, "Whoa, guys, there's just too much excitement on your face. This party is getting wild."
Yeah.
13U Cube says, "Pokemon Snap may not be like a Grand Slam hit, but it is more or less success. But is it more or less successful than Pokemon Ranger or whatever that subtitle is?" I don't know what Pokemon Ranger is, but all I know is Pokemon Snap is the only Pokemon game I really, really like.
But you haven't played the handheld RPGs, have you?
I've played one of them, and I don't remember which one. I played one a little bit. It was probably one of the first ones, red and blue,
Yeah,
yellow, red and
blue,
blue.
and yellow were the first
Um,
ones.
and I've kept track of them, but I've also played other similar games where the point is to go out and collect. Like Nino Kuni kind of has a similar um, collect the monsters type of thing, and those types of games just really don't do it for me. I don't mind filling out a bestiary. I actually rather like that. but
Mhm.
I don't really care for building games that typically don't care for games that build your party out of monsters you encounter in the
Yeah.
wild. For some reason, it's something that just doesn't really appeal to me.
Hmm. You see,
But
I've
I
played
still
a
really like Pokemon Snap. That was fun.
yeah, I haven't played a Pokemon game either, other than Pokemon Go. But I've played other games that have tried to capitalize on the monster RPG aspect. One particular one that I remember is called Jade Cocoon, and I think it's a PS2 game. But yeah, you build up a party of monsters. You collect other monsters, and you you evolve them and you breed them and all that kind of stuff. And it was an all right game. It was pretty repetitive because there was only 4 dungeons and then like some arena thing. Um, but it was an all right game. I played that and beat it. I caught all the monsters that were available. But yeah, it's not one that I would ever go back and play again. So,
Oh,
but
I did do something kind of interesting this week.
yeah,
I was on vacation in July with my mom, and one of the things we did while we were on vacation was we started playing Yakuza 5. And my mom, because she has excellent taste in video games, was very happy with. She really liked Yakuza 5 to the point where she's like, "You have to call me and let me know what happens, what happens." So I thought it would be fun to do a series of videos where I talk about what happens in the game subsequent to where she left off. So I recorded about 25 to 30 minutes of relaying what has happened since my mom went back home. And I loaded the footage into my PC and put it into my editor. And as I was reviewing it, I realized that while my ceiling fan is actually very quiet, it doesn't matter if the microphone is under it because the air pressure pushing on the microphone makes it sound like you're outside in gale force
nice,
winds. So the
nice.
whole so the whole thing is completely unusable, and I'm gonna have to do it again. And I haven't been feeling well, so I'm like, I don't wanna. I mean, I
Oh,
guess I could release it as is. You can hear me. You can. I am intelligible, but there's this throughout the whole thing that's really annoying. I'm like, oh
nice.
man, because it was hot. So I had the fans here, and my microphone was like way over here, but that wasn't just the moving air on the mic was just
Yeah,
enough to cause a lot of noise. And
nice.
oh well, so I'll
Yeah,
have to redo that. And I figure one of those videos will let my mom know what she'll be able to experience the game vicariously through my descriptions. And hey, maybe I might get a couple more people interested in the Yakuza series because it's really, really good and you should try it.
yeah, yeah. I bet it is. I don't really have an interest in playing it right now. So, uh,
Jet Dan's talking about our main topic, which we're going to get into in a bit. Says if Nintendo released a Virtual Boy, Virtual Boy Classic Edition, it would be a ripoff if every game released wasn't included because there's only like 12 games for the console. I think it's closer to a dozen, but yeah,
yeah, there wasn't very many.
If Nintendo did do some type of mini Virtual Boy, couldn't be too many, otherwise it'd be like a monocle type thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
may as well include them all because there weren't that many to begin with. It's kind of like what we were joking about last week. If you wanted to do a uh, N64 one, because it's like 30 best games for the 64. It's like that's kind of like all of them. Or
yeah,
30 best games for the Wii U. Oh, there's absolutely 30 great games for the Wii U, and that's pretty much all of them. So,
yeah, yeah. So
13U Cube, I don't know. Did you miss 10 minutes of the show?
we've been going for about 10 minutes, so
Yeah.
maybe you did. But starts at 8 Central every week,
We
unless we tell
try.
you otherwise.
Well, 13U Cube actually got in the chat about an hour early, and I don't know if the show didn't load for him or,
Uh,
but
that's a possibility. Yeah.
uh, shoot, I was gonna say something else and I forgot. Oh well.
Yeah.
So, you play anything interesting this week?
Well, this week I played more Legend of Dragoon. I'm on disc 3 now. I just started disc 3 a couple of days ago, so I'm only
How
about
many?
a couple hours into it. There's 4 discs on it. So nothing new to report on that game. But this week I decided I wanted to check out. There's 3 games that I wanted to play, and unfortunately, I was only able to play one of them. And these were games that have been in the news lately. The first one is a canceled Game Boy Color game. It's a RPG called Infinity. The game was canceled at some point. I think it was towards the end of the life of the Game Boy Color. And I tried to look for the article, but I couldn't find the article that referenced it. But the game is called Infinity, and the developers just this past week said, you know what, we've got the source code for this. We're going to and we're going to release the source code. They open sourced it and compiled a Game Boy Color ROM, and so people who use emulators can play this thing. I tried to load it up in the emulator that I use, but it I got to the title screen, I hit start, and then nothing happens. So I was very disappointed that I couldn't play this, and I haven't tried installing any other emulators to to test them out. The developer recommends one specific one, but it's not the one I use. So maybe it's just the fact that mine doesn't, or there's some bug in it that my emulator doesn't can't handle or something. But I wanted to try it. I'll probably play around with some other emulators this week and try that out. The other game that I wanted to play that I didn't get to play was Pokemon Uranium, which is a fan ROM hack where they took one of
Yeah.
the old games and hacked in a whole bunch of new Pokemon and story and everything. I wanted to try this one out, but the game got a cease and desist from Nintendo or a DMCA notice or something like that.
Hmm.
But I couldn't find a. I found several torrents for it, but I couldn't find one that looked trustworthy. So I just kind of said, I'll wait until somebody verifies one of these torrents before I download this one. And then the other game, and I actually got to play this for a little bit, was the Metroid Prime 2 remake. AM2R is what they call the game.
Another Metroid Prime 2 or Metroid something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's another Metroid 2 remake or something like that. And so I started playing that one, and I got didn't get too far in. I killed one Metroid. I haven't got any power ups yet, so
You know,
I maybe played about an hour of it.
I'm kind of interested in checking it out because blasphemy perhaps, but I don't really like Metroid 2 Return of Samus. And there's a couple reasons for it. One, it's too claustrophobic and not in a good way. It's claustrophobic in the sense that the screen was just too small for what they were trying to how the game was presented. I mean, I love the attention to detail in the sprite work. I love the giant
Mm-hmm.
Samus, but I mean, she's like a third of the screen tall, which is cool because I like big character sprites, but
Yeah.
it makes exploration a little, you almost want to zoom out a little bit so you can see what you're doing. Also, and this is just my opinion, of course, but I think that Metroid 2 may have the worst music of any Game Boy game ever. I really don't like the music in that game. May just be me
Uh,
though.
I don't know. I don't remember the music too much, but But what I've played of this remake so far is pretty good. They've added a couple of features that aren't in it, like wall grabbing. So if you jump and you don't quite make it, you can actually grab onto the ledge and lift yourself up. That's something that I know is not in the original Metroid 2. But
That's something that's actually in Other M.
yeah,
And if I'm remembering right, and I totally may not be, but if I'm remembering right, um, you can grab a ledge and then pull yourself up into morph ball form. And you need to do that to get into a pipe or vent where
yeah.
there's a missile expansion. And you can see the missile expansion like in the vent. I was wandering around for half an hour trying to figure out how the hell to get up there, because if I'm remembering correctly, at no point does the game ever tell you you can actually do that. Oh, I knew you
Huh.
could hang on a ledge and pull yourself up, but it never tells you, nor at any point prior, if I'm remembering correctly, is there any point where you pull yourself up into morph ball. And I actually had to look that up in a guide. I'm like,
Huh.
oh, you can do that? I did not know that.
That's cool.
Anyway, a little
Yeah.
anecdote
Yeah.
there.
But so I'm liking this game so far, and I'll probably
Good.
play it
It looks
through.
good. It looks good.
Yeah, it definitely looks good. The sprite work is really good. There are some funky collision issues that kind of annoy me. One of them is the enemies that kind of just go back and forth along the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, they'll hit the edge of the screen,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll hit a ledge or something, and then start to go back the other way. But because the floor is like one sprite height below where, or like it's just high enough for their sprite, so they'll hit it and then they'll go back just a little bit and then go back and then do that a couple of times. It's because it registers that they're hitting a ledge on the other direction. And so that's just kind of weird and annoying at times. But the other issue is that occasionally you'll bump into a ledge kind of like this, and you'll go into ledge grab, and it's you don't get stuck in it. It's just continuing the direction you were going will have you pull up and continue walking. But it's really annoying to be walking and then all of a sudden go into ledge grab where you're hanging below the rocks and then continue on walking. So I that's just something annoying that I've seen. It's nothing game breaking, but it's sad that Nintendo didn't like this, didn't like the fact that somebody was remaking one of their games, and it's sad that they sent the notice to Pokemon Uranium too. But
Yeah.
yeah, but you would think that Nintendo would be a little more loving, but Nintendo's not really a fan friendly company when it comes to fan remakes and fan games. Because
Not
they
when
did
it comes to playable games, no.
yeah, because they did something similar with
Or
that.
YouTube videos that use footage of their games.
Yeah. Well, they did something similar. There was a game a while back that was basic. It was Super Mario Brothers, but you could play as other characters from the Nintendo franchises. Like you could switch out and be Link or
Yeah.
Samus or the Contra guys, and I forget what the fate of that game was, like whether Nintendo DMCA'd it or not. I can't
You'd have to
remember,
have
but
a
I do
lot
know
of
that
companies DMCAing that one because it
yeah,
uses IP from a bunch of different people,
yeah.
Capcom, Konami, all kinds of them.
Yeah, but I do remember that they did go to Indiegogo and funded I guess, a clone of their own game, which used generic remake or generic characters that fit the profile of all the Nintendo ones, and stuff. So that was really cool. But yeah, Nintendo's just not very friendly with this fan stuff. And to be honest, I don't know of any video game company that is fan friendly in this way. I
Capcom
know
a bit. I mean, someone did kind of a Mega Man game with Street Fighter character Robot Masters, and
interesting.
Capcom distributed it.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah. That that sounds really interesting. But yeah.
Jet Dan has a very lovely comment in the chat here. Says this show is becoming like the Walking Dead show. I watch both every week. I can, but these days somehow you guys are beating out the Walking Dead in quality content. That's sad. I mean, really sad that a podcast is becoming far better than cable TV. Well, maybe that's because we're not killing off the popular characters every week.
Or teasing the death of a character, but not actually killing the character.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they've done that twice, where they tease the death of Glenn, and then the next episode he was like, "Oh, I'm okay," and then the season finale they were like, "Oh, somebody's going to die," but they don't actually show you who's dying, which ticked everybody off.
Friend of mine, I've actually never watched The Walking Dead. Friend of mine, it keeps telling me that she's like, "Oh, it's so amazing! You should watch it because zombies." I'm like, I like zombies.
Yeah, but one final thought on fan remakes is that as a game developer, I would there are several franchises that I would love to be an official developer for, but I can't muster the energy to make an unofficial fan game because I just can't imagine putting myself through years of development work on a game and then ending up not being able to release it officially or even release it unofficially and not make money off of it because I'm in this to make money even though I'm not making any right now. But there is one particular fan game that if I ever had the chance I would love to make. But I don't think Square would be very cooperative because my idea is to basically remake the second half of Final Fantasy IV, so 2 on the SNES, because there at one point you start out playing Cecil as a Dark Knight, and then at about halfway through the game, you go to the top of this mountain and you you change to a paladin, and my fan idea is that in this test to become a paladin, the test is you become the paladin, then you fight your Dark Knight self, and at the top of the screen in the actual game it says to be a true paladin you must not fight now. And so there's 2 ways to win this. One is to actually fight and kill the Dark Knight Cecil, and the other one is just to stay alive long enough for the game to say, "Oh, you're a paladin now." And so my fan idea is that in that,
it's not really how a paladin works, but
but
I'm thinking D&D rules. So
yeah, but so my fan game idea is that instead of having either way make you become a paladin, if you actually fight and kill the Dark Knight, you actually you don't pass the test, so you're stuck as a Dark Knight for the rest of the game. And but it's not just like you're stuck as the Dark Knight and everything. It's that your heart actually becomes corrupted. And so over the course of the rest of the game, you become more and more and more evil until you get to the end where Cecil actually becomes the end boss. So I have this whole story idea. I've had this whole story idea thought out, but I just can't muster the strength and energy to make a game like that. But
Jet Dan's recommending a Shonen Jump versus Capcom game. That's actually a really good idea.
I don't know what that is.
Shonen Jump's a lot of it's a manga magazine where a lot of the really popular mangas run weekly.
Okay.
So you'd like One Piece, for example, I think is in Shonen Jump. So you'd have Luffy, whatever his name is, and characters like that. So and
Mm,
like they had Tatsunoko versus Capcom, which was
yeah.
really really good. And so Shonen Jump versus Capcom, I could absolutely see
Yeah.
that.
So how exactly did Disney crush the idea of a new Marvel versus Capcom?
I hadn't heard that, but being that Disney has Marvel now, they could, but I didn't read anything about that.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything that they have said no to any future one because it's Disney doesn't make video games, but I don't see why they wouldn't license out their IP for video games. And Marvel versus Capcom is one of those games that would make a sizable amount of money for Disney.
Yeah, yeah. I think Tatsunoko versus Capcom did pretty well over here, considering that, with the exception of blanking on the character names. Tatsunoko versus Camp. Most of America doesn't know who any of the Tatsunoko characters
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
except the Bird Force, the five Gotchaman. Um, I think is what they were known in English. Uh, but Shonen Jump, as Jet Dan's pointing out, a lot of Americans very happy with anime, so they know One Piece, and as Jet Dan's pointing out, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball Z, Bleach. So I think that could be a really good
yeah.
idea.
That could work out
Yeah.
because yeah, there's a lot of good characters in there. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh would be an interesting one. I guess that would function kind of like the Pokemon trainer in Smash Brothers, where you just summon certain card characters.
He just stands over there chucking cards or summoning card monsters and things,
Yeah,
and just making up the rules as he goes along.
exactly.
Moi Nintendo says, "Hi there, doing good. I felt better, but other than that, I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking." All right,
Uh,
let's kick the bucket list a little bit before we move on to tonight's major attraction.
all right.
So, bucket list. Have you ever laughed so much you cried?
Yes, I have.
Any particular moments stand out?
Um, no, nothing. Well, there was there was one time back when see we were yeah it was back when my son was still a baby. My oldest was still a baby, and we were going through some clothes that somebody gave to us, and we were going through them, and came across this one out. It was a one piece sleeper, but instead of feet, it was just kind of a sleeping bag thing, and I don't know what it was about this particular moment, but the idea of a sleeping bag with sleeves just made me laugh, and I couldn't stop for a while, and my wife thought I was absolutely crazy, but I'm just like, it's a sleeping bag with sleeves, and it was just so weird and random moment, but yeah, it was just tears were streaming and everything. But yeah, I've had plenty of moments like that. So, what about you?
Oh yeah. I don't laugh that much, but occasionally something will strike me funny enough where I'll have tears streaming. Um, I like to joke about what's the Pixar movie Inside? No,
Inside
that's
Out?
the game. Inside Out, the one with the girl with the
Yeah,
in her head. People are, "Oh, the movie made me cry." I said, "It made me cry too." They're like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, that whole cat joke during the end credits, that was so funny. I had tears streaming down my face." So the movie did make me cry, probably not in the way that it's supposed to. But
yeah.
another one that sticks out in my mind is when I did a review of the Gem and the Holograms television show. Oh my God, I I could barely get through that. You can find that on my YouTube channel. It's one of the 30 Days of Netflix ones. I also did a video recently called "Laughter Genuine or Scripted." which is a compilation of me laughing in various videos. And the gag is you guess whether my laughter is put on or genuine. And the gem review is actually in there, and that one is actually genuine laughter. I am laughing so hard I have tears streaming down my face.
Yeah.
13UQ says you were almost in tears. I was totally in tears. I was like having trouble breathe. Yeah, spoiler. That's in that laughter videos, genuine or scripted. That's actually the only one that's genuine. The rest of them are scripted. They're put on.
Yeah.
Let me move back to something Jet Dan said about Marvel versus Capcom. I think Disney is known as a family company, but they do keep somewhat separate from the Disney stable and the Marvel stable. So as long as Mickey Mouse is not in the lineup beating the snot out of Spider-Man, it would probably be okay. But on that note, if you guys remember a few years back when they did DC versus Mortal Kombat, and they kind of had to tone down the violence and wanted to take the fatalities out of it, at least for the
heroes.
Heroes. I've been watching some footage of Injustice 2. I think if they made DC versus Mortal Kombat today, they would not have bothered toning that down at all.
Probably not.
They'd be like, yeah, rip his head off. Who cares?
But speaking of, I've actually seen some videos of it, and the most recent one was the Harley Quinn video, and it had Bulls or Deadshot in there too. But the thing that bothered me with this was that, okay, I can accept the idea of this alternate universe having basically Kryptonian steroids, which make you as strong as Superman. But the thing that bothered me in this was one of the clips in this was Deadshot versus Superman.
Okay.
And Deadshot was shooting Superman.
Oh, yeah.
And blood was spurting out. And I'm like, okay, are these kryptonite bullets? Because that's the only reason blood would actually come off of Superman. I don't care if you're as strong as Superman, your bullets are still bullets.
Yeah,
and they will bounce off of him.
In the first game, the conceit was they had little magic pills that would make them as strong and durable as Superman, so that the Joker could conceivably get in a fist fight with Superman. So I'm like, did you load your gun with those pills? or coat your bullets in the pill juice? I don't know. Whatever, it's a video game. It's fine.
Yeah, but that just totally bothered me about that. And Injustice is actually a game that I want to play, and mostly because they actually added Lobo to it. So, and Lobo is like the only character I really care about, because I still remember the Justice League cartoon show where Superman ended up getting sent to the future, like 10,000, 20, or hundreds of thousands of years into the future. And then back in the present day, Lobo shows up and he's like, I heard Superman's gone. You want me to replace him? And that was such a great episode.
Doesn't he meet like Vandal Savage in the future?
Yeah. Vandal Savage is the only human left alive, and
he's like really bored.
Yeah, he's bored, and he's like, what?
Go back and fix stuff, please. It's boring.
Yeah, will you go back and stop me so that this doesn't happen, because it sucks.
Reminds me of an episode of Earthworm Jim, which they actually made a cartoon about, and Evil the cat is singing, and then I will just, I have no idea if this is an accurate impression. I don't remember his voice. And then I will destroy the universe. And his henchman's like, well, what are you going to do then when the universe is completely destroyed? And he goes, oh, I didn't actually think about that. Gloat, I suppose. Cackle endlessly in the void. I love that. 13U asks if I'm on call this weekend. Nope, thankfully not. So, okay, next on the list. Have you ever caught a snowflake on your tongue?
Yes, who hasn't? Except for
Uh,
people who live in the desert
I
and
live
the
in the
jungle.
desert, but I have been where it snowed, and yes, I've caught snowflakes on my tongue. Let's see. Next, had children.
Yes, of course. I've got 6 of them as proof.
Yep. And I've got zero. So
Yeah. So something that I've done, but Andrew hasn't.
there you
Look
go.
at
There you
that.
go. That may be a first for this list. Um, all right. Have a pet.
Yes, I've got 2 dogs and some fish, but are fish really pets?
You can try to pet them, but
It's like they just to me they're more like decoration. Just
yeah,
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 they're yeah. There's nothing, no interaction whatsoever other than to give them food, and so it's just like watering a plant at that point.
yeah. Searching You Cube says it snows in the desert occasionally, and that's
Yes,
true.
that is true,
It
but
snowed in Phoenix once, to my knowledge.
yeah, but I don't think it snows in the Sahara.
No,
So,
probably not. But all right, so last one from the bucket list. Ever been sledding on a big hill?
um, I've been sledding. It all depends on what you consider a big hill, because
Yeah.
I don't recall any of the hills that I've ever sledded on as remarkably big.
Hmm.
They're steep enough, and there's straight enough ground at the bottom of it that you can sled for a while. Just at the places I've actually sledded at that I can remember sledding at. I'm sure it's possible that I've actually sledded at some large hills when I lived in Utah, but I was 4 and under at that point, so I don't remember much of anything there. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I've been sledding. My more interesting story, though, is skiing, and that's I had trouble. I was riding the ski lift up, and what you're supposed to do is put your feet on the ground and let the chair kind of lift you into a standing position rather than actually trying to stand up from the ski lift. Well, I didn't really know that, so I tried to stand up when we got to the top, and I pitched forward and fell over. Got up again and got hit in the back of the head with the ski lift chair. So they had to stop the whole chairlift thing, make sure I wasn't dead, but I was okay. Um, Jet Dan asks a bonus bucket list and says, "Have either of us ever been trapped or lost?"
hmm.
Um, Never truly trapped. No. Lost. I've been disoriented, but never really truly lost.
Uh,
I do have a story about that, but Zachary,
yeah.
what do you think?
I don't recall ever being trapped at any point. There was a time when my parents had bought a brand new deep freeze and had put it on the porch and plugged it in so it could get cold enough before they moved it wherever they were going to put it. And we would go inside, and this was the summer, so we'd go inside and sit in it, and it was nice and chilly in there. And and there was the occasional time when my brothers would sit on top of it and wouldn't let me out,
Mm,
but that's not really being trapped so much as, like, where you're truly stuck and you need assistance from the outside to get out. So no, I don't think I've ever been trapped. And lost, if you consider making a wrong turn somewhere and ending up where you not supposed to be or didn't want to be as lost, then yeah, plenty of times, but never where I've been like in the middle of the woods and couldn't find my way back or something like that, though.
mm. Let's see. We being my mom, my sister, and I were out in Malibu visiting a friend of mom's, and this was when I was probably 5 or 6, and my sister was 4 or 5. And Pam, my mom's friend, lived out in Malibu in the hills somewhere, and over one hill were these satellite dishes, and we liked hiking over there to look at the satellite dishes because we were young and that was cool for some reason. So we're like, Mom, can we hike over to the satellite dishes? And Mom says, Nah, it's getting late. And then we did the, oh, please, Mom, please. And so she relented and we hiked over there. And this is over, there's no trail or anything, just up a mountain and down the other side, trying to avoid barbed wire and stuff like that. And we got there, and Mom was right the first time we shouldn't have gone because it got dark. And so we ended up having to walk. We weren't really lost, but it ended up being like 6 mile walk on the roads around the entire place to get back down to her house. And so I was kind of okay. My sister was really young and tired, and we had a stupid dog with us, Floyd the dog. Um, okay. And we were in the last mile or two. Mom, because my sister was falling asleep and she was heavy, and um, Mom flags down this car, this driven by some lady with two kids of her own, and explain. And this is like 10 o'clock at night now, and she's trying to explain we're just lost and tired, and could we get a ride? And the woman was, strangers in the middle of the night, but it's a woman and two really small kids and a dog. So we all piled in the back seat with Kelly and me and Mom and Floyd the dog, who's about 100 pounds, sitting on Mom's lap, and she took us the rest of the way home. So never really
Yeah.
lost, but that we always refer to that as our midnight hike story. Which there's another story where my sister kind of got trapped. She fell in a reservoir, and this reservoir is really slimy cement side, so you fall in, there's no way in hell you're climbing out.
Yeah.
I was with her. The reason she fell in was Floyd the dog. I was running back and forth and just kind of accidentally knocked her in. But my sister happened to have a toy rubber band gun, which is a piece of plastic about this long that you take a rubber band, you loop it over the far end, and then you pull the trigger and it shoots rubber bands. And so I used that to pull her out of the reservoir. And what was funny is for some reason we thought that Mom would be mad at us for almost drowning or something because kids are stupid. And so we tried to sneak in and change our clothes before she'd know. But two things: one, Mom does the laundry, so she's going to figure that out. And two, we had muddy footprints all through the house. So
Nice.
kids are dumb.
Yeah,
And
they are.
I was no exception. In fact, I wrote an article years ago about kids are dumb, which was just retelling events from my own youth. So, okay, that's enough for the bucket list. So let us move on to the main event, which is the prospective Super NES, SNES Classic Edition. So we'll say that the SNES Classic Edition also has 30 games, and we're going to ignore things like licensing problems and things like that, and just say here's a list of 30 awesome SNES games that we'd like to see on the on such a system. First of all, I'd just like to ask Zachary, have you ever referred to the Super NES or SNES as SNES?
No,
Neither have I, and it bugs me whenever I hear anyone do that.
It's like I either say Super Nintendo, SNES, or Super NES. Those are the only three I've ever used.
Yeah. I didn't even hear SNES until like the last several years. When I was growing up, I'd never heard that. And as 13U Cube pointed out, a lot of the games on these lists are going to have Super in the title. Looking at my own, I've got 7 games with Super in the title, and two of the games I rejected have Super in the title. So who went first last week? Do you remember?
I think you did.
I did? Okay, so go ahead.
All right. So I tried to put myself in the position of being Nintendo and picking titles that Nintendo would consider their iconic things. but also the fact that I was me and wanted some of my own games in there. So I'm trying to I try to do a little balancing act, but so there's going to be a lot of games on here that are I think on pretty much everybody else's lists, but a lot of them are on my list because they're my favorite games ever.
Mm.
And so I went through the list of Super Nintendo games on Wikipedia, and just so everything's in alphabetical order. So it all just is what what they are. So first up is ActRaiser, and
Okay.
this is probably one of my top favorite Super Nintendo games, just because it's got kind of a city building sim aspect to it,
Hmm.
and then the side scrolling action levels, and which is I think is really cool. And then it's got two modes of play too. So you can play it as intended with the city building and then the levels, but you could also play hard mode, which is just the side scrolling action levels, and that's really cool too. So it's definitely one of my favorite games ever. And I think, and this has been on a couple other lists that I've seen too. And I think Nintendo would be, it would be very disappointing if they didn't include this. So the next one was Battletoads and Double Dragon. Since they only used Double Dragon on the NES, and Battletoads is still a pretty iconic video game as well. So I figure let's go ahead and combine them and do the Battletoads and Double Dragon game. And next is a game called Brandish. I don't think this would actually make a Nintendo list, but it's still a game that I enjoy. It's an action RPG, but not like Zelda or anything like that. It's actually got a really quirky mechanic to it, where instead of like in Zelda, you've got free range movement across the screen, but with Brandish, when you turn, it turns the screen instead of you, and so you're always facing north, but it just the top of the screen, not north, but the level turns around you. And so it's
Mm.
just a very interesting mechanic, but the game is actually really fun once you actually get used to that mechanic. Next on the list is Breath of Fire. This is a great RPG from Capcom. Uh, Breath of Fire 2 is probably better story wise, but I think Breath of Fire has way better dragon system and gameplay, so I went with Breath of Fire. Next is Castlevania Dracula X. There's also Super Castlevania on this, and I think I think Castlevania Dracula X is probably a little more interesting of a game, and so I went with that one over Super Castlevania.
Hmm.
So next is Chrono Trigger, probably on lists of the best RPGs ever. Chrono Trigger is almost always in the top 10, so no reason not to include it. Next up is Demon's Crest. Like I said in my NES list, I love the Gargoyles Quest games, and Demon's Crest is the sequel to Gargoyles Quest 2 for the Super Nintendo, and it's been one of my top favorite games ever. So yeah, it's on there. Now, next up is Donkey Kong Country. I couldn't decide whether the first Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Country 2. So I just went with the first one because it actually has Donkey Kong as a playable character. So yeah,
That's a
I'm
good
sure
point.
there's plenty of arguments to include either 2 or 3
Yeah.
on the list instead, but Donkey Kong Country, the first one, has Donkey Kong in it. So
Well, I
next,
mean, he
yeah.
isn't two. He's just the the damsel, so to speak.
Yeah,
Seen at the
yeah,
very
he's
end.
not a playable character, but yeah. So next up is Earthbound, of course.
Hmm.
I think it would be very very weird if Nintendo doesn't include Earthbound, but they are Nintendo. Next up, Earthworm Jim.
Mhm.
This was a game that I remember playing, and it's just such a weird action platformer. You play as a worm in a super suit, and you get to use yourself as a whip, and it's a great game. So next up, Final Fantasy III, or 6 in the official numbering system. This one is just for a Final Fantasy game, I would prefer this one over Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo. I would much prefer to have 3. And then Illusion of Gaia.
Uh,
And this is probably one of the earliest games that I ever played on the Super Nintendo. It's a great action RPG. It's actually the second in a series, and I actually have Soul Blazer later on, which is the first of the series. But Illusion of Gaia, still one of my top favorite games ever. Next up is the first fighting game on here, Killer Instinct, just because I think it's way better than, for me anyways, it's way better than Mortal Kombat, but it's very different from Street Fighter. So I like Killer Instinct. I would want to see that there. Next is King Arthur's World. This is the way I describe this. It's a cross between Warcraft and Lemmings, in that you just summon guys, they walk across the screen, do whatever they're going to do, and walk back, and you just keep doing that, and you achieve your objective, like killing the bad guys, taking over the castle, whatever. It's a great game. I wish more people knew about it and played it. Next up is Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, because of course.
yeah.
Next is The Lost Vikings, because I just love this. I would love to see them include both Lost Vikings and Lost Vikings 2, but the first one is good enough as it is. Next up, Lufia and the Fortress of Doom, another great RPG on the Super Nintendo. There's tons of those on there.
There's a bunch of great RPGs on SNES. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, there are. I could probably include half this list just RPGs. But,
Probably. Yeah.
yeah. Next up, Mario Paint. It's a great title. There's just so much fun to be had playing Mario Paint, and you don't
I,
even need the mouse.
I get well.
The mouse
Maybe,
helps, but
yeah, maybe if they had all they'd really need to do, I suppose, is include a cheapo USB port on the console, and then you can just plug a mouse in and call it a day.
yeah, yeah. Next up, Mega Man X. I think the first one the first Mega Man X game is a great one. I think there's 3 on the Mega Man
Yeah.
X 1, 2, and 3,
Mm-hmm.
but and the other 2 are really good too. But I don't think they really do anything beyond what Mega Man X already did. So we'll just include that one.
3
And,
adds a lot of story. A
yeah,
lot of story.
yeah. So I
Really
think
talking.
yeah. But I think I like the X franchise better
Mhm.
than the original series.
Really?
So yeah,
Not a lot of people say that. I
I do.
Interesting little side note about the X series. I heard year two, three, four back that the X series in box was actually worth quite a bit, and I had no idea. But I found it funny because I own Mega Man X 1, 2, and 3. Their original boxes. They're open, of course, but
Yeah.
I have the box and the manuals and everything that comes in the box, and they're in good condition. So, I mean, they don't sell for like thousands of dollars or anything,
No,
but
they
I
don't.
think X3 in box went for like 250 at one point. I'm like, I'm not getting rid of it.
Yeah. Jet Dan says, speaking of SNES fighting games, it would be cool to see Primal Rage.
I
Actually,
invented Primal Rage, I'll have you know. When I was really young, my sister and I were hashing out ideas for games, and I was like, it would be awesome? Like a fighting game like Street Fighter, but with dinosaurs, man. And then they came out with Primal Rage, which
Yeah.
is okay.
Yeah,
It's
see,
not as good as I was thinking in my head, but it's still
yeah.
pretty cool.
See, I thought about Primal Rage and Clay Fighter,
Uh
but Killer Instinct is just way better than both of those.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, but moving on, Micro Machines.
Okay.
It's a fun racing game. Yeah. And then after that, Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure. This is just,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a great platformer. If you like Donkey Kong Country, it plays fairly similar to it, just without the second character that tags
Uh,
along. But
yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
suppose, except Pitfall Harry Jr. has a
it has a,
slingshot
yeah,
projectile
slingshot
thing, but
and
yeah.
stuff. But yeah, but the platforming is a lot like Donkey Kong Country. Next up,
Gorgeous art
RoboCop.
style too. Really like the look of
Yes,
the game. Animation
yes,
and art
yeah.
is great.
Yeah. Next up, RoboCop versus Terminator.
That
I think
game is brutal hard.
yes, it can be
Especially once
very
you move
hard.
into the future, those damn Terminators are almost like they should be, I guess, but almost impossible to put down.
Yeah. So
Still
I
a
like
cool
it.
game though.
It is a great game. Then R Type 3, the
Hmm.
third Lightning. I think this is the only shoot 'em up that I have on my list. So I think it's a good one. Next up, Secret of Evermore.
Yeah.
This is one that is, not a lot of people consider it one of their top favorite action and action RPGs, but I do, and because it's just
Hmm.
you get to play in different
Uh,
different worlds, time time zones or whatever, and the dog you have changes with each one of them, and I think that's a fun mechanic. But overall, the game is great. Next up is Secret of Mana, and this is one that they would be sore. It would be terrible if they excluded this one because, like Chrono Trigger, it's probably one of the top RPGs ever on any system.
I
Next,
can't argue with that.
yeah. Next up, Sim City. I like the Super
Hmm.
Nintendo version of Sim City, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Bowser is the giant monster that comes in
That's
and
true.
destroys your town. But yeah, it's a fun version of it, and not as many features as the PC version, but still it's fun to play.
Oh, Jet Dan's throwing down a gauntlet, throwing down an RPG gauntlet.
Well, I actually have. Do I have super? Did I not include Super Mario RPG? I guess I left Super Mario RPG off my list, which is really weird. I because I actually go up to 35 on my list, so I could easily throw at 36 in
30.
here. Yeah, I tried to keep it so. But there's just so many great games. It's hard to pick.
There are.
So Soul Blazer is the next one. Like I said, it's the predecessor to Illusion of Gaia, but I think Illusion of Gaia is probably the better of the two. So Soul Blazer could be left off if I needed to. Next up, Star Fox, because I think this is my only flight simulator on here, and it's a great one. And then Super Street Fighter or Street Fighter 2 Turbo,
Hmm.
which is there are several Street Fighter games on there, and I think Street
I'd
Fighter
say
Turbo is
that's the
probably the
definitive
best one.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Next up, Super Mario Kart, then Super Mario World, and Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island,
Hmm.
because Nintendo would never leave those three off. Then Super Metroid, which they better have as well. And then Wario's Woods.
Okay.
This is one that I really like. They included Dr. Mario on the NES Classic, and I think because they're it seems like they want to avoid just including Tetris, which there is Super Tetris on the Super Nintendo, but
Hmm.
Wario Woods I think is a more fun game to me at least because it's not just moving pieces where you need them. You actually play as a toad, picking up pieces and moving them where you need them. And I think that's a great mechanic. I think that makes this genre more fun than just playing something like Tetris or Dr. Mario.
Mm.
And then finally, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, because that is a great game, and I think it's probably a very iconic game for the series, and I don't have anything resembling a horror, well, except Demon's Crest, but so that makes this makes something a little more horror-y on this. So that's my list, 35 titles, and I am sure I could move some out of there, like Lufia and Soul Blazer. Let's see, what are the five that I would take out? So Lufia, Soul Blazer, I guess Pitfall, and Micro Machines, since we've got Super Mario Kart. And then number 5 would be Brandish, because I don't think Nintendo would actually include Brandish. So those are the 5 that I would remove from my list to get it down to that. And I guess if you wanted to, you could replace Final Fantasy 3 with Super Mario RPG, just to have an RPG in there. So there we go.
Okay. Yeah, when I put my list together, I was kind of trying to balance the games that should be on there because they're wholly representative of the Super NES legacy and library, but also just games that I really like and want on there and think more people would play. So here's my list in alphabetical order. First one is Chrono Trigger, which is a fantastic RPG that I tried not to go too RPG heavy because, as you pointed out, there are just so many great RPGs for the Super NES, but some of them are just so damn good that it's almost criminal to leave them off. So,
Yeah.
Chrono Trigger. Next one is I absolutely agree with you. Demon's Crest. I actually had Super Ghouls and Ghosts on there at one point, but had Ghosts and Goblins on the NES collection. So I figured, Besides, I think Demon's Crest is more interesting and actually controls better than Super Ghouls and Ghosts.
Yeah.
Still a great game. Still really like it, and the music's fantastic. But I went with Demon's Crest instead. Next, I went with Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. I think, even though it doesn't have Donkey Kong in it, I think the game, except as a damsel, I think the game really upped the mechanics of the game and how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
The control and the hit detection was a lot tighter. And 3, I felt, was not quite as good as either of the first two. It's still fun, but just looking at all 3, I think 2 is cream of the crop. So went with that one. Earthbound, another RPG. I actually have not played Earthbound. I do have it on the Wii U Virtual Console. It's one, so I'm kind of going on taking everyone's word for it that this belongs on the list. What I've heard about it is really cool. So I'm sure it definitely earns its spot. 5, we've got Earthworm Jim. And I believe that Earthworm Jim is better than Earthworm Jim 2. Although I do like Earthworm Jim 2. What's interesting is Earthworm Jim 2 added snot. Literally, there's a green gob of mucus hitching a ride in Earthworm Jim's backpack, and its name is Snot. And it's a sentient snot ball.
Very interesting.
But it doesn't really do anything new for the game. It just replaces old moves. Snot is like the Bionic Commando grappling hook, just kind of shoots out of his pack, sticks to the ceiling so he can swing across gaps. Well, in the first game, he uses his head as a whip to lasso onto hooks and swing across, which I think is just funnier anyway. And the snot actually becomes a parachute to slow Jim's descent. In the first game, he whips his head around real fast like a
Yeah,
helicopter
like a
again, which I
helicopter. Yeah.
find is funnier. And as Get just pointed out in the chat, it's the one with the bouncing puppies off the marshmallows, which is the best mini game ever. That's
Yeah.
something else that my family and I played and just laughed ourselves to tears. So
Yeah.
Pete the puppy is like in a house that's on fire or something like that, and he's chucking puppies out the window, and you have to bounce them on a giant marshmallow over to safety. And if you miss, they go splat. And if you splat too many puppies, Pete the puppy like hulks out and eats you. Oh, it's
Hmm.
so good, so good.
Yeah.
Next on the list, Final Fantasy 3 or 6 if you're going with the Japanese numbering. I agree that of the two on the SNES, I think Final Fantasy 3 is better than 2. So,
Yeah.
and probably my favorite of the Final Fantasy games, period.
Yeah, it's always at the top of my list. I
Yeah.
have not played a Final Fantasy game that I consider better than it.
Yeah.
But there are lots of Final Fantasy games that I consider better than 7. So,
Yeah, seven is good, but I
yeah.
still feel that 7. I even felt at the time that 7 was overrated. I played
Yeah.
it at a friend's house, and I was like, "It's fine, but come on, guys, it's fine. It's good." It reminds me
Yeah.
of Halo. I was like, "Yeah, it's good. It's not
Yeah.
the best first-person shooter I've ever played, but it's fine."
Yeah. Well,
So
13 U Cube says he loves the opera scene in Final Fantasy 3, and yes, that is a great
sure,
scene.
yeah.
That octopus, I forget his name, but yeah, that octopus is a lot is a great antagonist character, and I think I
Yeah.
wish more games had somebody like that. They tried to do similar things with other characters in the Final Fantasy series, but the octopus I think is just the best antagonist that you don't
Mm.
actually ever get to kill in a game ever. So
Next on my list is Flashback, which is one
I
of
don't think I
those
played that
real
one.
stylistic rotoscoped animation type games, almost like Prince of Persia. It's one of those ones that it kind of feels like the controls suck, but they don't
Mhm.
suck so much as they are really deliberate. It's kind of like some people think the controls in Monster Hunter sucks because you've got this gigantic 12-foot sword and you
Yeah,
hit the button and the character takes 2 seconds to swing it over its head. And you're like, come on, come on. So some people feel like it's slow and unresponsive, but that's how you have to decide what move you're going to do and commit to it. In
yeah,
Flashback, if you're going to jump, your character kind of winds up and jumps. So
yeah.
you have to be real deliberate and planning about what you're doing. If you can get over that, it's a great game. Out of This
Okay.
World is a similar game, similar looks, similar feel, but I feel that Flashback is the much better
Yeah,
game of the two. So I included that on the list. Next on the list is F-Zero, which I don't like because I don't care for racing games, but it's one of those games I feel that's kind of important to have on a
yeah.
SNES retro collection, something that exemplifies
Yeah,
the
F
library.
Zero is definitely a good one, but I don't know. I think I think Super Mario Kart is probably the more iconic racing game. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Um, so where was I? F-Zero. Oh, okay. So number 9, Harvest Moon. Uh,
yeah. I didn't
I
even think about that one.
yeah,
So
it's not for everyone, but it's a really great, just relax. If you've played, it's like Animal Crossing, just not completely
yeah,
boring. Sorry, Kelly.
yeah. See, well,
Um,
I've never actually played a Harvest Moon game, and I've never played Animal Crossing either. So
Yeah,
uh,
Harvest Moon. It's exactly what it sounds like, and the original Harvest Moon is pretty great. I've also played Rune Factory Frontier, which is Harvest Moon plus dungeon crawling.
Yeah.
which actually kind of works. Um, but yeah, Harvest Moon's a really great game. It's not for everyone, but I think it. I also, when I made the list, tried to keep a good variety of types of games on there,
Yeah.
and not make half of them RPGs, even though I
Exactly.
do have my fair share. So
Yeah.
next is Mega Man X,
All right.
which of the three, I think Mega Man X is probably the best of the three. Two
Yeah.
is fine, I guess. I just like the characters in the first one better, and then
Yeah.
three kind of got up its own butt with story a little bit. Not too terribly bad or pretentious, but
Yeah. Well, I'm
uh,
looking at the Wikipedia page, and it says that Mega Man X3 was a different developer. Capcom published it, but
oh really?
Minakuchi Engineering actually developed it. So
I
maybe
did
that
not know
was
that.
maybe that was part of it. A different developer took a little different direction with it. So, did you ever play Mega Man 7 on
Yeah.
the Super Nintendo?
Mhm.
How does that one compare to Mega Man X?
Um, I honestly kind of prefer it because I'm just a fan of the classic style series more than the X series.
Hmm.
X is a little self-serious and broody, and the Mega Man series is just a bit more whimsical and fun. And there's certainly room for both, but I just I, I don't know. Maybe if I'd played Mega Man X first, I'd like that better. But I played the original Mega Man games first, so I like that better.
Yeah.
But I feel that since we had Mega Man 2 on the last list, that it's nice to have variety, and let's see what the other franchise did, the Mega Man X franchise
Yeah.
did. So that's why I
Okay.
went with that one. Next on the list is Mortal Kombat 2,
Okay.
which I think is of the probably the best of the Mortal Kombat series of the early games anyway.
Yeah.
Three is on the Super NES, but it's just not as good in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think 3 is as good either. Mortal Kombat 2, I think, perfected 2D fighting and stuff for the type of game that Mortal Kombat is. But again, I think Killer Instinct's the better the better game. So
I actually like both Street Fighter and I mean, now once you get to N64 with Killer Instinct Gold, I think they called it. I probably may have given the edge to Killer Instinct, but I felt Killer
yeah,
Instinct, while competent for an SNES port, was just held back a little bit too much by the constraints of the hardware. So that's why I didn't include it. But
okay,
anyway, so next is a game that, well, I'll just say it, NBA Jam. I mean,
okay.
that is an arcade
Yeah, I
staple
I didn't
of the
actually include
90s.
any sports titles on my list,
Yeah.
which is
Uh,
I guess kind of surprising for me because they had one on the NES one they should have.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
NBA Jam, yeah,
it's a fun game. It's a two-on-two basketball game, and it's just it, it's almost the Mario Sports of basketball games before they started really doing Mario Sports titles, because
yeah,
it's very arcadey, and it started as an arcade game, and it
yeah,
really is just a ton of fun. So threw something in there for the sports fans. Next one is Ogre Battle, March of the Black Queen, which is more of a strategy RPG than straight
yeah,
RPG, but it's one that probably develops into a better game on the 64, Ogre Battle 64, but
yeah.
this is where it got its start, and still a great game if you're
Yeah,
into
see,
that style of
I
game.
actually tried to play Ogre Battle once, and I couldn't quite get into it like I could something like Final Fantasy Tactics. But,
Hmm.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it just played differently than I was expecting it to,
Yeah, I
and
find that
so
the Ogre Battle series and similar strategy games aren't really for me either. I appreciate them more
yeah,
than I actually enjoy them, but I wanted to include it just for variety's sake,
yeah,
just to give purchasers of this potential SNES Classic Edition a nice variety of games, from
yeah,
fighting games of strategy, RPG, and whatever Harvest Moon is. Um, so
Yeah.
next on the list is Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure,
All
which
right.
again, great, lovely little platformer. It's got great art and animation. Um, and spoilers for a game that's 20 years old now, but I love the fact that when you beat your game and save your father, Pitfall Harry Sr., he's literally the blocky
The
character from the
the Atari
Atari
2600.
2600.
Yeah. That
I,
that
oh, that had
was
me in
awesome.
stitches. I loved that. That was
Yes,
so
I
good.
when I beat that game for the first time, I was not expecting to see him like that, and I was like, "Wow, that is some dedication
Yeah,
to canon
makes no
there."
damn sense. That
Yeah.
talk about, yeah, I mean, you want what do they call ludonarrative dissonance? It's like what? but but what? But it was just great anyway.
Oh,
Jesse was talking about some of the Disney games like Aladdin. There were a lot of really good Disney
yeah.
games on the
I think
SNES.
Aladdin is
Aladdin, Lion
probably the
King.
top Disney one on there. Lion King was really
Ah,
good too.
yeah. If I had to pick one, it- I would, yeah, I'd go with Aladdin even over something like Mickey Mouse Magical. What is it?
Um, Mickey Mouse Mansion or something.
No, it's
Oh, there's Mickey Mania: The Timeless Adventures, and then
no,
Mickey's Ultimate Challenge.
no. I'll know when
Um,
I hear it.
I'm going up to the Disney ones now. Let's see here. Golly.
No, it's gonna
No, I don't
bug
see
me.
another Mickey Mouse one on here. There's
Uh,
Pinocchio.
there was the hell's it? Oh, Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. That's what it is.
Uh,
Still a great game.
Great Circus Mystery.
Yeah, Magical
The
Quest
Magical Quest starring
starring
Mickey Mouse.
Mickey
Okay,
Mouse.
yeah, that
Yeah.
one's a good one too.
Castle Evolution's good too.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Where was I? Pitfall. Was Pitfall the last one I said? Pitfall.
Yeah,
Okay,
you said
so
Pitfall.
15, Star Fox.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, another,
Yeah, I think that's one of
even
those
at 10
titles that
frames per second, it's still a great game.
yeah, I think that's one of those titles that Nintendo would feel obligated to include
Yeah,
because
yeah,
everybody likes Star Fox.
it's another one of those just quintessential SNES games that you kind of can't leave off the list.
Yeah.
Um, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which we discussed on your list, is I kept Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat on there just because they're so different
Yeah.
in fighting style, in the type of fighting game, that I felt just fine including both of them. Other, I mean, I have multiple RPGs on here, so two fighting games, I guess, isn't too big a problem. But they're
No.
different enough that I thought it merited their inclusion.
Yeah.
And they're both also the quintessential fighting games of the '90s. Yeah, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Those were the two
Hmm.
fighting games back then. So, all
Yeah.
right. So now we're moving into the super section of the list. I actually went with Super Castlevania 4.
Okay.
Um, great. I was kind of waffling because we had Castlevania on the last one, and it doesn't really do much more than make it prettier and add characters and areas and stuff. But
Yeah.
darn it, it's just so good. Except the Mode 7 clock tower thing kind of makes me nauseous. But which is actually why I left Contra 3: The Alien Wars off the list, because I hate the Mode 7 sections in that game, the
Yeah.
overheads. Oh, I
Hmm.
hate that so much. That's why I left Contra 3 off the list. But anyway, so Super Castlevania 4. Next, Super Mario Kart.
Of
I don't
course.
like Super Mario Kart, but
Yeah.
it's one of those games that it's kind of like one of those you have to. Uh, um, people would be very angry if there were no Super Mario Kart. So, also, Mario Kart and F Zero are so like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. They're just two completely different flavors of the same genre. Although some people would argue that F Zero is a straight racer and Mario Kart is a kart racing game. I know
Yeah.
people who draw a line between those two genres. Um, Scotty J Man says, I don't think they released Star Fox as it uses the FX chip, which Argonauts holds the patent. Well, they could license it.
Well, they're just it's just
I
they're
didn't know
just going to
that,
be
but
emulating it anyways. They
yeah,
don't
so
have
it
to
may
include
not
the actual
actually,
chip.
yeah, they may not actually use the chip, but we're ignoring all licensing difficulties here anyway. So
Yeah.
let's see, cart Super Mario RPG: Legend of the Seven Stars, a game I actually feel is overrated. It's good. Don't get me wrong, it's good, but like Final Fantasy VII, I feel like it's not that good. It's just solidly good. But
I think of all the games that take a non RPG franchise and turn it into an RPG,
mhm.
this is probably the best. But there's not very many of those out
Yeah,
there. But
I'm trying to think of another
there
example.
was there was a Sonic RPG that BioWare did. But I don't remember much about it
Yeah.
because nobody cared about it.
What's interesting
Um,
is they might have made the Paper Mario and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door RPGs, which are phenomenal. Actually, I'd say Thousand Year Door is probably. I would say Thousand Year. I would absolutely unequivocally say that Thousand Year Door is a better RPG than Super
yeah,
Mario RPG, but it's on the GameCube, so it doesn't belong on the list.
yeah,
Jet Dan says, and yeah, I saw you mention this earlier. Have we guys heard of Mario is Missing in Mario's Time Machine?
yes,
Yes. And
yeah,
there's a reason I'm not including him on the
yeah.
list.
So I played Mario is
Maybe
Missing,
as
and
curiosities, certainly. I mean, it's the same thing someone mentioned Action
yeah,
52 for the last one.
yeah.
That would be kind of the gag game.
Yeah.
Um,
See, the thing with Mario Missing is that it's not an actual Mario game because you
mm-mm.
can't die in this. There's just you play as Luigi and you go through this, but you even when you're fighting Bowser, you can't actually lose.
Yeah.
And I'm just it's like what makes this game fun? There's nothing fun here, but when you get to games like Luigi's Mansion, that is a fun game. But yeah, Mario's Missing is terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's something I might add as just a goofy curiosity, but yeah. And 13U Cube's getting a little salty here, saying people would be angry if you give Europe and Japan all the good virtual console games too, but that doesn't stop NOA. That's true.
Yeah. Uh,
So, where was I? Cart
Super Mario
RPG.
RPG is what you
Okay,
need.
so Super Mario World. Um, and I'm waffling back and forth. Should we do the whole Mario All Stars plus Super Mario World? Is that cheating? If it's not
I,
cheating, then yeah, sure, go ahead. But
yeah,
uh,
I'm of the opinion that that's technically
5 games,
5 games,
yeah,
so I wouldn't go with it. I would just go with Super Mario
yeah. Because
World.
remember, this is a collection
Uh,
of actual game ROMs, and that was actually 5 games. But um,
yeah,
also, there were some slight changes, although I think changes for the better for the Super Mario World that was on that cart. They changed Luigi's sprite and changed his physics a little bit, if I'm remembering correctly. But Super Mario 1, 2, and 3 were on the NES console, and Lost Levels is, in my opinion, not very good. It's an interesting curiosity, but if Lost Levels was originally marketed as Super Mario Brothers Extreme Edition or Super Mario Brothers Expert Edition or something like that rather than Super Mario Brothers 2, I think it would have seen a lot more success than it did.
yeah,
Because it doesn't do anything new. It just makes it arbitrarily hard and not in really a fun way, at least for
yeah.
me.
Yeah, they just basically said, okay, you know how difficult World 8 is?
Yeah.
Let's dial that up to
Yeah,
10.
but
And
eight was difficult, with the exception of that stupid castle maze thing where you have to just figure out the correct path, and there's no real way to intuit or work
yeah,
that out other than keep figuring it out. Although I think the All Stars edition added little chimes when you go the right path, so because otherwise you run out of. I hate that anyway.
yeah,
Um, But definitely, whether it's in the All Stars collection or not, Super Mario World should absolutely be on the list.
Yes.
As should Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Crying Mario Baby Be Damned, because that is an amazingly
Yes,
excellent platformer with a
it is. It
wonderful
is.
visual style. If you
Yeah,
haven't seen
and
it, it's a kind of a kid's
yeah,
coloring book looking
yeah, and
uh,
just like with the
style.
NES Classic, they included all three Mario games because each one brought a different thing to the table. The same thing with Super Mario World and Super Mario World 2. They're just two visually different games, different gameplay styles, and both of them are excellent at what they do. And so, yeah, there's no reason not to include both of them.
Yeah. Um, Jet Dan says, I've heard Ghostbusters 2 on the Super NES was better game out of most Ghostbusters games. Did that one ever actually, was that a Super NES game or?
There was Ghostbusters 2 on the NES, but I
Yeah,
don't
there
remember
was.
seeing a Ghostbusters 2 on the Super NES. Let's see if it's on this list.
Because I remember there is a platformer Ghostbusters game. I don't think it's Ghostbusters 2, but I also don't think
No,
we
there
ever saw it in the US.
Wikipedia doesn't have a Ghostbusters 2 on the
Or maybe
list.
it was Genesis. I don't know. But yeah,
Uh,
I actually have a soft spot for the NES Ghostbusters game, the Ghostbusters 1,
yeah.
because I'm a Ghostbusters fanboy.
Oh, the Atari Ghostbusters. That was actually for an
Yeah.
Atari game.
Yeah.
It was a good game.
I actually like it better than the Nintendo version because
Yeah,
climbing those damn stairs is annoying.
yeah. But
It,
yeah,
anyway.
I liked the Atari one just because it was just the three different modes of play was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So all right, but
13 says Genesis Ghostbusters. Yeah, that may be the one I'm thinking of, the platformer one with the kind of
yeah.
big-headed characters. Anyway, last. Oh no, Super Metroid speaks for itself. And
Hmm.
last Super on my list is Super Star Wars: Return of the Jedi.
Okay, Return of the Jedi was a
I
good
went
one.
with
Yeah.
Jedi because I feel it has the most gameplay variety and most characters. So
Hmm.
also
Yeah.
I love the flying in the Death Star. It's one
Yeah.
of my favorite things.
Yeah. The funny thing is with the Star Wars games, um, they released Star Wars games for the Game Boy, the original
Hmm.
black and white one, and the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were kind of dumbed down versions of the Super Star Wars games, but the Star Wars game that they went with for A New Hope was the NES one, so which was kind of funny. They didn't do the Super Nintendo one, but I think I personally like the Nintendo one better than the Super Nintendo
Yeah,
one for A New Hope, but
yeah.
just because it's weird. But
Yeah,
yeah,
Jet Dan says the Ghostbusters 2 might have only been released in Europe. That may be why I
that's a
haven't heard it because
possibility. Yeah.
I'm an America centric kind of guy.
Yep.
I have to be reminded that there are other countries. Um, okay, so
Uh,
moving past the super section of the list, we've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time, which is the Turtles beat 'em up game, and they travel in time and fight dinosaurs and stuff. It's pretty cool.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a good
also
game. I
has a
like it.
great also has the funny thing where you can grab foot shoulders and literally chuck them at the screen,
Yeah,
which is something for some reason it's something that I would try to do with every character because I
no,
always thought it was so
yeah,
funny.
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tournament Fighters wasn't a very good game though. I didn't
Mm.
like that one,
Oh, the
even though it
Turtles
had
tournament fighter
yeah
one.
Turtles Tournament Fighters. It
Good
had some
idea
fun
though.
characters in there, but yeah, it just
Yeah.
wasn't very good.
Yeah. Great idea, not the best execution,
Yeah.
unfortunately. All right. So next, number 25 on my list is all right. Let me give this a little background. I was thinking of having the Tetris and Dr. Mario game, which is literally one game, Tetris and Dr. Mario. Not they put two games on the same cart, although you could play them
Mhm.
separately, but there was a mode in the game that actually combined Tetris with Dr. Mario. And
Huh.
that was really cool. But I left Tetris off the NES list because I figured Tetris is not a Nintendo game to me. It's something you can play anywhere. It's more
Yeah.
of a Game Boy game for me. And Dr. Mario I had on the last one. So instead, I went with Tetris Attack, which is the panel de pawn type game, the two tiled switch and puzzle
Yeah.
game, which that comes up from the bottom instead of things falling from the top,
Hmm.
which started a bunch of great games in that vein, like Pokemon Puzzle League on the
Yeah.
64, I think. And this is where that started. It's a really great game, and I think it more than earns its spot on the list. Besides, we need a puzzler on here, so that's why I went
Yeah.
with Tetris Attack. Next one might be something of an oddball choice, but I feel it's a really great platformer, and that is The Adventures of Batman and Robin, which is based on the Batman animated series, and each level is kind of based on an episode of the animated series, and damned if they don't knock it out of the park with the animation and the art style and the look and the feel of the game.
Yeah.
It is just a lot of fun to play. So it's maybe
Okay.
not a game that you initially think of when you think of Super NES, because
Yeah.
you think Mario Kart and Mario and his World and things like that, but
Yeah.
that
See,
was just a really great game.
yeah. So when I think of Batman games, iconic Batman games that aren't the Arkham series, I think of the NES Batman, and that's the only one that ever really comes to mind as being a fun Batman game.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I don't think I've ever actually played the Batman and Robin game on the Super Nintendo. So
Yeah. It's really really good. So,
I'll have to
Judd
try it.
Dan says, "Are there any PAL or Japan exclusives that could work on the SNES Classic Edition?" I'm sure they could, but I'm not as familiar with PAL or Japan exclusives. So,
The only one that comes to mind for me is Terranigma, because that's the third in the Soul Blazer series. So the Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and then Terranigma. But I don't think Nintendo would include it just
were
because
were any of the Cho
yeah,
Aniki games on the Super NES? Because if they were, bring that over.
I don't know.
If you don't know what that is, look it up. You'll be glad you did. Um, where was I? Tetris Attack, Batman
You
and
did
Robin.
Batman
Okay.
and Robin.
Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past,
Yeah.
um, which is something I need to give another shot because I got annoyed with it and shut it off after the first dungeon. Because it was one of those things where you die at the boss and they start you at the beginning of the dungeon and you have to walk all the way back to the boss, and that annoyed me. I'm like, I don't want to walk through the dungeon. I've already been through the dungeon. Um, Also, I really suck at fighting in the overhead Zelda games like Zelda
Yeah.
1 and Link to the Past. It's, I don't know what it is about that kind of off-centered sword swinging thing that I'm just not very good at. So
Hmm.
I'll have to sit down and give that another chance though, because I'm sure this is one of the best games of all time for a reason.
Yeah.
Um, Jet Dan says Pack Attack or Yoshi's Cookie for puzzle games. Yoshi's Cookie, although I think of that more of an NES game, but there
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
an
I think of
SNES version of that,
yeah.
and but yeah, Yoshi's Cookie is one I rather like. I also like just Yoshi, which is another you you switch the entire. There's columns of stuff with things falling from the top, and you have to switch two columns. That's another good one too.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. The Lost Vikings. I was kind of waffling back and forth between Vikings 1 and 2, but I'm more familiar with the first one, so
Yeah.
I went with the first one. I don't know
Yeah.
if the second
The
one
second one
really does
adds
anything different, but
well, it adds new characters
mhm.
because at the end of the first one, you escape the alien ship, but you don't go back to your home, and so you're stuck on these alien worlds. And during the gameplay, you actually come across you come across aliens that you can play as, and so it adds extra characters to the puzzles and stuff. But I think I don't think it does anything more interesting beyond the first one.
Okay,
So
so
yeah.
yeah, I'm good with the first one. All right, number 29 is one of those games that's probably going to make a lot of you go, huh? But it's one of my personal favorites, Wild Guns, which
Wild
is
Guns.
Which is
I
a Western side scroller kind of shooter. Only it's more of a gallery shooter. You can play a cowboy or a like Western belle, you know,
yeah.
in the dress with kind of the bustle thing, and they just jump all over the place and shoot everything. It's got giant robots. It is so
Huh.
damn good. Look up screenshots.
Okay.
They're actually
Yeah,
doing
I'm looking at it, looking at
they're
a
actually
screenshot
doing like
here.
a Wild Guns Reloaded or some
Huh.
kind of remake type of thing for I think PS4 or something. Um,
Okay.
but man, is that game is just so much damn fun. I love that game.
Yeah.
Jet
Jet
Dan,
Dan
yes, I
asks.
believe we both had Super Metroid on our
Yes, we
list.
both did. There's no reason not to include that
Yeah,
game,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah.
But looking at this Wild Guns, I actually played a game called POW Prisoners of War
Yes,
on
yeah, it's
the
an
NES.
arcade game.
It's very similar to how you describe
Yeah,
Wild Guns. So
in the arcade, it uses a trackball.
yeah.
So you're moving the cursor. For some of you who are not old enough to remember these old games, it actually had a giant like cue ball set in the console that you would spin like that, and moving it like that would move the cursor around the screen, but spinning it real hard would get your character to move out of the way of oncoming fire. Uh, but the SNES version somehow still really managed to work really well.
Yeah.
I think it did the whole the D-pad moves the cursor and then double tapping moves your character. Maybe you hold down a button. I don't really remember, but
Well, I
um,
would the left and right triggers would probably be good for that.
I forget how it
I don't know.
controls, but I just really like the game. It's got a great aesthetic style. It's got giant robots. It's a Western. It's just a ton of fun. So
Yeah.
if you have a chance to play it, please do. And you probably will because it's being remade for PS4 or something. And the
Yeah.
last one on my list, of course, is Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which is just a ton of fun and
It is
has one
such a
of
great
has one
game.
of the great. The game actually may be too long for its own good, but it has one of the best soundtracks on the Super NES too.
Yeah.
Really wonderful music in that game. So that's my 30. I had a couple that I
Okay.
left off the list. I mentioned Contra 3. I mentioned Super Ghouls and Ghosts and Tetris and Mario. I left ActRaiser off. I certainly don't begrudge its inclusion because it was a game that did something extraordinarily unique
Hmm.
with the combination of the side-scrolling platformer and the city building stuff. The problem is I don't like the game. I just didn't really like either aspect of the game. I thought the side scroller stuff was kind of pedestrian, and in the same way, I think the Wizards and Warriors games are just meh, and the city
Yeah.
building stuff didn't do it for me either. But I certainly am not against its conclusion because it is kind of one of those games that defines the SNES library, and it's
Yeah.
one that a lot of people really look back on fondly. Um, I also, as almost a joke, thought about adding the SNES version of Jurassic Park just because it's a very cartoony overhead game that plays exactly as you would expect a overhead cartoony looking Jurassic Park game to play,
Hmm.
except it when you go indoors it turns into a really bad first person shooter, but
Yeah.
but bad in the most charming way possible. it
Yeah.
that makes it a really curious kind of what were they thinking.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
really that really does hurt the game, so I left it off the list.
Yeah.
Actually,
A
I
couple of
go ahead.
Oh, a couple of titles that we missed that other people might think should be included. One of them, Shaq Fu. No, I'm just kidding. But Shaq Fu is just fun, just because. But the other one, more seriously,
Kitsch.
is Populous. Um,
Yeah, I thought about that one too, but
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of that genre. But I
Yeah.
also thought I also thought about some games like what was one you had on there? Uh, uh, Things like The Sims or Doom. I think are just better represented on PC than
yeah.
they are
Yeah.
on the
Doom,
SNES.
especially. Yeah.
Uh, but there was if there was one that I would put on there, it would be Sim Ant, just because I thought the game was so damn funny.
Yeah, Sim Ant is good. I played that one on the PC. I've never played the Super Nintendo version, but yeah, Sim Ant is a lot of fun. I wish it was more successful than it was, but
Yeah.
yeah. All
So
right. So should we take a look at some of the
we will just say, let me go through two others. Another one I left off the list was, oh, one thing I wanted to say is the Genesis version is probably the only version of the same game on both platforms that I felt was better on the Genesis. The Jurassic Park on Genesis was better than Jurassic Park on Super NES. It was it was a platformer, and it
yeah.
just worked better. I admire what they're trying to do on the Super NES, though. Super
Mhm.
Double Dragon, I just left off because we had Double Dragon on the last. I think I had Double
Yeah.
Dragon 2 on the last one.
No,
Uh,
I believe you went with the Battletoads Double Dragon.
oh, that's right,
Yeah.
Battletoads Double Dragon. But I ran out
Yeah.
of room, so Double Dragon got dropped. And the last one that's really emblematic of Super NES that I left off was Pilot Wings. I know
hmm
I hate Pilot Wings.
Yeah.
Like, I don't enjoy the
I
game at
don't.
all, but
Yeah.
I
I
know
don't
a
think I
lot of
ever
people
played
really
it.
do
So
like it.
yeah.
So yeah, we actually had a lot, and we're running late, but let's go through because we had a lot of feedback. Kyle had a bunch
He
on our
included a lot that we didn't include. So
yeah, Axlay, which I'd have to look up to remember which one that is, but I do remember it. I
yeah.
remember the name. I don't remember so much of the game, but Axlay, Contra 3, Donkey Kong Country, F-Zero, Final Fantasy 5. Um, I think he means that would be
Well,
2 in the States, right?
no,
No,
no.
no. Four,
Five is the
four is
one
2.
that wasn't.
Five, which
Yeah,
one's 5?
five
That never came
is
out here.
that one never came out in the U.S. It
Okay.
didn't come out until the PS1 when they did the Final Fantasy anthology. It's the
Hmm.
one where it's the first one that allows you to collect jobs and switch jobs out as you need them.
Okay.
Well, I think Final Fantasy 3 did that as well, the original Final Fantasy 3, but Final Fantasy 5 did it really well. But yeah, it never was never released in the U.S. So
Hmm. Ken Griffey Jr.'s winning run. Good choice. I thought about that one too, but I went with
NBA Jam, yeah.
NBA Jam instead. Killer Instinct, Link to the Past, Mega Man X, Micro Machines 2, racing game,
Okay.
NBA Jam, Ninja Warriors. I forget which one that is.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played Ninja Warriors. So
Proteus, which is another game I can't remember. Rock and
yeah,
Roll Racing is exactly what it sounds like, but I do remember it being pretty cool. Not a big racing fan, though.
yeah,
Star Fox, Sunset Riders, another Western side scrolly shooty game. Wild Guns is better, but it's still a fine game. Super Castlevania 4, Super Mario All Stars plus Super Mario World, Mario Kart, Super Off Road. Sure, sure, sure. Super Punch Out. It's good, but I like the original a lot better. Enough that I'm kind of comfortable leaving that one off the list. But it's still a fun game.
yeah.
Super Street Fighter 2
The
instead
new
of Street Fighter
challengers.
2 Turbo. Interesting choice, but sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was also which was the Alpha one? I think Street Fighter Alpha 2 was on the Super NES. Was pretty good.
Yeah, there were several Street Fighter games. Let's see what all was on here. Uh, so we've got Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior, Street Fighter Alpha 2, and then
Yeah,
Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting, and then Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers.
yeah, yeah.
And honestly, Street Fighter 2 is Turbo is the best out of all of them.
I would
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, but
Yeah.
still. So Turtles in Time, Tetris
Mhm.
and Dr. Mario, Lost Vikings, UN Squadron. Okay.
Yeah.
shooty plane game. Uniracers, one of Rare's early games, which is you're on a unicycle running around a course. That is actually a really cool game. Oh, Wild Guns is on this too. You have good taste, Kyle. Yoshi's Island, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, and then honorable mentions to Mega Man 7, Plock. Okay, the kind of a attempted mascot game, and
Yeah.
Super Adventure Island. I think there were two Super Adventure Islands on
Yes, there were.
SNES.
Yep.
Uh, Crofty lists ActRaiser, Disney's Aladdin, Chrono Trigger, Contra 3, all three Donkey Kong countries, Earthbound to F-Zero, Final Fantasy 6, Legend of the Mystical Ninja. I think that's a Goemon game, if I'm not mistaken. But I
Yeah.
know that's one that people are very fond of. Link to the Past, Mega Man X, Pilot Wings, Pocky and Rocky. That's a good one. Secret of Mana. That
Yeah.
if I had a lot of room on a list, I definitely would have included that.
Yeah.
But I had enough RPGs as it was. Star Fox, Sunset Riders again, Super Bomberman. Neither of us had any of the Bomberman games, but
Yeah.
they're certainly worth an inclusion, I think.
Yeah. They are. Bomberman is a fun franchise.
Yeah.
So.
Castlevania 4, Mario Kart, Mario RPG, Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Super Metroid, Super Punch Out, Super Street Fighter 2, Turtles in Time, UN Squadron, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. That's a solid list there, Croft.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Good list.
let's see, Sora. Let's see, Super Mario All-Stars plus Mario World, Yoshi's Island, Robo Trek. That's not one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one either.
Neither is Mickey Mouse: The Great Circus Mystery. I've heard of it. I never played it though.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy.
Robo Trek looks like it's an RPG. So.
Okay.
Huh. Yeah, it's developed by or published by Enix, developed by
okay.
Quintet. So yeah,
that's a nice pedigree. I'll have to look at that.
I'll have to look that one up too.
Yeah,
I've never
cool.
played it. So
Final Fantasy 5 and 6, Super Metroid, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Secret of Mana, Pilot Wings, Star Fox 2, Wishful Thinker. yeah. Earthbound. For those of you who don't know, Star Fox 2 was completed, but it was shelved and never released. And people have been saying, "Oh, come on, just let us have it," kind of like Earthbound 3. Earthbound, Mega Man X, Turtles in Time, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2, Breath of Fire 1 and 2, Lufia 1 and 2, Super Widget.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, not sure about that one either. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Super Widget. There it is. Atlas game. Boy, this is very small entry. Action platforming video series created for NES in the 90s, published and developed by Atlas, based on cartoon series Widget the World Watcher, which stars a purple alien named Widget, followed by a sequel, Super Widget. Now that purple,
it's a
that actually does sound familiar.
It's a platformer. I'm looking at it, but it doesn't seem familiar at all. So,
Tetris Attack, Darius Twins.
Not familiar with that one either. So,
Darius Twins. Let's see. Oh, Darius Twin is a horizontal scrolling shooter.
Okay.
And it's part of the Darius series. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah.
New one on me too. Link to the Past, Kirby Dream Land. Yeah, there's a bunch of Kirby's on the Super NES.
Yep.
I'm actually kind of. I forget which one it is, but there's one that's kind of like Marble Madness or a kind of a pinball / Marble Madness one that I always
pinball.
Is that what it's on?
Let's see, Kirby Avalanche, Kirby Superstar.
I think it's Dream Course.
Kirby Dream Course. Yeah,
I think that might be the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Dream Course is probably one. It says it's a golf simulator or golf game.
Oh yeah, kind of like miniature golf or something. I thought kind of like Marble Madness. Kirby Dreamland, Kirby Superstar, sure, Mickey Mouse, Magical Quest, and then honorable mentions to Harvest Moon, Final Fantasy IV, R-Type 3, Mega Man X 2 and 3, Super Adventure Island, Arrow the Acrobat, another one of those kind of failed mascot games. Metal Warriors and Illusion of Gaia. Let's see.
He also mentions maybe Cool World or Out to Lunch. But,
Cool World. I never actually played it.
It's based on the movie Cool World.
Which is kind of terrible.
Yeah.
But, Let's
All
see.
right.
Mechatama has just a few. Super Metroid, if nothing else, Super Metroid. Yeah. Super
Yeah.
Mario World, Link to the Past, Star Fox, Mega Man X, Chrono Trigger. Says,
Yeah.
I'm bored to tears by JRPG gameplay, but the story and music on this one grabbed me and held me through to the end. Well, one of many endings.
Yeah.
That's Chrono Trigger for you. Even
Yeah.
if even it, that's one of those great equalizers of RPGs. Even people who don't really care for RPGs, or more specifically, so-called JRPGs, Chrono Trigger seems to be the one that even people who don't like that genre really don't mind.
Yeah.
Great game. 13U Cube, California Games 2. Interesting
Okay.
choice. Interesting choice. Dracula X, Chrono Trigger, Draken.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
one that yeah, it's fun. It took me forever to figure out how to play it, but once I figured it out, I thought it was a really great game. But yeah,
Mhm.
I don't consider it one of the greats on the Super Nintendo, but yeah, it's if they include that, I wouldn't complain. So
Yeah. Let's see. Earthbound F Zero, Final Fantasy 3, King of the Monsters. Interesting choice. All right.
yes, interesting.
Out of the, and I don't mean that in a snide way. That's just an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Out of this world. Like I put Flashback on the list. 13U Cube
Hmm.
went Out of this world, and that's totally fair. Populous, Race
Yeah.
Driving. Secret of Evermore, Secret of Mana, Soul Blazer, it's a good choice. Star
Hmm.
Fox, Street Fighter 2, parentheses, pick one. Yeah, there's a
We
bunch
picked
of them.
Turbo.
Yeah, we picked Turbo. I think someone else said Super Street Fighter 2. Castlevania 4, Super Mario All Stars Plus World. Looks like everyone's pretty cool with Super Mario All Stars Plus World counting as a
Yeah.
game. So that's fine. Super Mario RPG, Super Metroid, Super Punch Out, Super R Type, Super Star Wars, all three Super Star Wars games, Turtles in Time, ActRaiser, Battletoads and Double Dragon, Pilot Wings, and Link to the Past. Let's see. And I
That was
had,
the last on that list, or the last of the list provided on
yeah,
Random Tower.
I had a few people on Facebook. Nicholas Patrick says, "Got to have Hong Kong '97," which never came out here, and was like a really. Uh, Look at James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd. He looks at that game in one of his videos. If you want a good laugh, Kevin Kruger says 30. Man, I'd need like 100 for the good games on that thing. And that's true.
Yes, yes, yes.
Uh,
There are tons of good games on the Super
all
Nintendo.
right. Chandler Bond says Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Country. I'm sorry, Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Country 2, Star Fox, Super Metroid, Link to the Past, Tetris Attack, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 3 or 6, however you want to count those, F Zero, Kirby Dream Land, uh, parentheses, the most underrated Kirby game. I don't know if Dreamland, I don't know if it would. Do you think Dreamland's underrated? I think it's pretty fondly looked upon.
I think it's I don't I yeah
I
I
don't
think
know.
when people think of Kirby
I mean,
games, Kirby's Dream Land
I
is
didn't
one of
have it
those
on my
ones that
list,
hangs.
so
So
maybe it is
well,
underrated.
I don't have a Kirby game on my list.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Super Star Wars, Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 2, Super Mario Brothers Collection, and Mario Kart. And that was 15, but still. Okay, so man, lots of good games. Uh,
Yeah. This makes me want to go out and spend a couple of
go to the
thousand
flea
dollars
market.
buying all these games again.
13U Cube says, don't know if anyone but me had Draken. I
Oh,
don't have it.
I'm
I don't
pretty
think I've
sure
ever
I
played it.
actually have it. All my Super Nintendo stuff is packed away, but I'm pretty sure I actually own a copy,
Yeah,
and I owned it when I was a kid too, and it took
it's.
me forever to figure out how to play it
I don't
because
think I even ever saw it in Blockbuster. It's one of those games that I became aware of like in the last decade or so, like past the '90s.
yeah,
It was one of those I heard someone talking about. I'm like, oh, what's that? And had to go look it up. So maybe I watched a part of a Let's Play or some retrospective
yeah.
on it. Um, So Jet Dan says, so can we do more podcasts with these types of themes? Seems fun to visit Back to the Future console, 64, PS1, Sega Dreamcast, Game Boy Advance, original Xbox. Yeah, we can do
Yeah,
more of these. I think maybe we'll skip a week because that's 2 weeks in a row of us doing this.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. We don't want to do this every week, but yeah, it's definitely fun to look back at these things. Yeah, and I actually never owned a Nintendo 64, so I wouldn't be able to provide anything of meaning or anything meaningful beyond Super or Mario 64, Zelda Ocarina of Time, um, and Super and Mario Kart
Blast Core,
64. Those are the
Blast
only games that
Core,
I've ever actually played on there. Well, I guess GoldenEye. I played
GoldenEye,
GoldenEye, so
uh,
but,
Turok.
yeah.
Yeah, I would be junket like Genesis collection or
Hi, Cecil. Yeah, we're
PS1
almost
collection.
done with the podcast, so glad you could join us.
Yeah, we had a. Let me check the um, YouTubes real quick. Dee, 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 dee. We have Andrew Tunstall saying, "No shaft your testicle." Oh, I all
Okay.
right. I have no idea what that means, but hey, thanks for commenting. And Phil G asks, "What is your channel about?" Nothing specific, just me making goofy videos.
Yeah.
And let's see, I had another one here that I actually zoomed past. Uh, oh, that I'm sorry, that's a comment on a different video. So all right, that's not relevant. Um, well, yeah, I mean, Cecil, man, were you working? Uh, sorry you missed it. I mean, we ran over an hour and you still missed the entire show.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, mate. Okay, so we're that's it for us. Thank you everyone for participating and providing us with your own providing us with your own thoughts on
Yeah.
what the ultimate collection of 30 Super NES games would be. I'll
And there's a lot of overlap between all these lists that our lists and the lists that you guys provided. So definitely, we should probably take all those overlaps and just make that the definitive list, and and then add a couple of things on top of it if it's not a full 30. But yeah.
I'll have to do some Excel foo to do that.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so we'll call it here. So let's. I need to lay down. um, but it's fun talking video games with you,
Yes, it is.
folks. That almost sounded really bad. I said folks, and it came out kind of bad. Andrew Eisen here, Eisen is the last name, and plug it into YouTube, and you'll find my YouTube channel, which possibly where you're watching this right now. I just recently tried something new called a live review party, where I did a live stream review of the new Ghostbusters movie, and which was basically just an hour chat of my thoughts on the film and interacting with the people who were watching live. So I'm thinking about doing some more of those occasionally. So if you have any suggestions on format of that show or things you'd like to see me discuss or any suggestions, or if you're like, oh, please don't do that, it was terrible. Who the heck is DJ Deadpool? DJ Deadpool was someone in the chat during my live review party who seemed more interested in talking about like Black Ops 3 or some other
Okay.
things that weren't Ghostbusters. I'm really not sure. And DJ got in kind of a tiff with someone, and I couldn't figure out. Granted, I was just talking about the movie, so I wasn't paying as close attention to the chat as I would like to. And I just saw him getting a little salty with someone, and I scrolled back up. I'm like, I'm not sure who you're arguing with or what you're arguing about, but let's all bring it down a little bit and talk about movies. Um, but it was a good. I didn't have to boot anybody. I did, everyone was nice. So I think it was a successful experiment. I think it went pretty well, but I certainly welcome everyone's feedback. I know it's long. It was about an hour, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll probably try some of those. I'm thinking about doing one of those for Sausage Party. I might go see that tomorrow or next week. Maybe not tomorrow. I feel awful. Um, but anyway, you can follow me on Twitter. Oh, milestone. I now have a video with over 1 million views. Can you guess which one?
And you've made all of 37 cents off of it.
Can you? Yeah, no. Naturally, it's the video where my mom watches me masturbate to kittens. That that's my video with over 1 million views, because of course it is. And no, actually, I can look it up real quick. I've made more than 37 cents on it. Let me bring up my analytics here real quick. Revenue. Um, there we go. Mom reacts to her son masturbating. So let me lifetime. So lifetime for that video, which has been up for a year and a half, is $16.07. I have a video with 1 million views, and it has made $16.07. But that's probably because the estimated monetized playbacks, in other words, of the million plus views, of the million plus times this video has been watched, only 17,845 of them have been monetized, which probably means most people use an ad blocker. So that
Yeah.
would probably be why. But interestingly, if you want to know what my biggest earning video is, that would be scroll up. Hang on. Scrolling. We're scrolling. Come on. YouTube's being a little mean right now. Okay, here we go. My biggest earner, of course it is. How to make fake semen.
How much have you made off that one?
How to make fake semen behind the scenes of 50 Shades of Grey, the pop-up book, which is another video I did, which is exactly what it sounds like, 50 Shades of Grey, the pop-up book. So I did a behind the scenes video of how to make fake semen, and my estimated revenue for that video is $129.76. So, yay me. And let's see, what are the views on that? Review. For crying out loud. Who cares? 97,871. So almost 100,000 views on that.
Okay.
So yeah, I have reached the million views club, which means nothing at all. I don't get an internet cookie or anything.
Yeah.
It's just something that is. So 13, can I link your Nintendo "Why Don't You Want My Money" video in my video? Sure. You're surprised my shirtless video doesn't have that many views? Yeah, that's
the man your games could sell to.
The Old Spice parody. The
Yeah.
man your games can sell to. I did a parody of that Old Spice commercial. Look down, look up, and I'm on a horse. That one. And last I looked at it, it had in the 30,000s, something like that. That one was actually interesting. I did that in like 2012 and caused a very, very minor controversy in that I had a joke on the end that used the word whore. And some people took offense to that. And it didn't occur to me at the time that some people would have a very negative, viscerally negative reaction to the use of the word, regardless of the intent in which it was used. Um, and that's an
Yeah.
unfortunate oversight on my part, but oh well, live and learn. So, but still, I'm proud of the video. It was a lot of that one is probably the most complicated. I had a crew. It took me like 9 months to organize. I had a crew of like 10 people helping me out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of it. Check it out. It's called uh, "The Man Your Games Could Sell to." Nintendo Old Spice parody, something like that. Um, Jet Dan, am I going to do anything special for 10,000 subs? I do have something planned. I don't know if I can do it though. It becomes kind of a rights issue, and that's all I'll say about it. I do have something that I think would be funny. Um, but then again, I thought the "I'm on a whore" joke would be funny, and well, to be fair, most people found it funny, but some people found it really distasteful. And I'm wondering if my idea for the 10,000 subs anniversary thing would be distasteful in any way. I've been putting a lot of thought into it, and I think it's funny, but I need to talk to a lot of different people and see if there's some perspective I'm not seeing that it would be in poor taste. So
Yeah.
also it's a rights thing, and I'm not sure if I would get in trouble actually doing it, but I think it would be fun. So hopefully it doesn't look like my subscriber numbers are climbing too fast. So I currently have, I think, like 9,100. So I'm like 800 some subscribers away from 10,000. So I think I probably have at least until Christmas to
Yeah.
try and get this idea of mine off the ground, or think of something else. Um, so anyway, um, you swear you thought it was a snake around my neck? You mean the shirt that drops in the Old Spice video? Yeah. That was a tough effect. I did it behind the scenes of that one too. That explains how I did a lot of the stuff in that. If you want to look that up, PC culture makes it hard not to offend someone. It's not so much PC culture. It's there's just different perspectives. For example, when you tell a joke, you have to understand that there's a certain amount of people. You have to be cognizant of what audience you're trying to reach. And if you're trying to reach the broadest possible audience, you want to perhaps curtail your use of the F word. Not that I have a problem with the F word or I think you shouldn't ever say it. It's just that I want to appeal to the broadest possible audience, and I know that some people are turned off by that word. Although I will sometimes actually use that particular word. Um, if I think it's necessary, if I think the joke is stronger because of it, understanding and accepting that some people are going to be turned off by that kind of language. And I think that's okay. If you want an example of that, look up a video of mine called, I think it's called Getting to Know the Neighbors. Let me double check on that for you real quick. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's called Getting to Know the Neighbors. It's a video I did about 4 years ago that has a very bad word in it, but I very specifically chose to use that bad word in order to facilitate the punchline of a very specific joke. So, uh, but I realize that some people would flinch or find such language comfortable. Like, I don't think Zachary wants his kids to watch that video, for example. But
Yeah.
watch the video and let me know what you think. It's called Getting to Know the Neighbors. Um, so uh, I had a tweet about swearing that was interesting. Uh, I'm glad you thought so. I don't remember what it was, but I think it was something like, I don't begrudge you your opinion, but if you can't communicate it in a way that isn't profane or nasty or unpleasant, I'm not interested in hearing it. I think is something what I said. Um, So Jet Dan says it's the internet. Being offended is a key element of your membership. Welcome to the internet. Be offended by
Yeah.
something. So, okay, that's enough about me. Add Andrew Eisen on Twitter. Andrew Eisen YouTube is the Facebook. Sorry for blabbering so long. Zachary, plug away, please.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Easy Night, and you can follow my game development work. It's DK_gaming on Twitter and DivineKnightGaming.com. And you can follow the Oklahoma game development scene at OK Game Devs on Twitter and OKGameDev.com. And hopefully you'll have some more content on all those things over the course of the next week, but we'll just have to find out. So there you go.
Let me just link my Getting to Know the Neighbors video just in the chat for anyone who wants to watch it. And, excuse me. Pardon. Okay, so also I may actually leave my hair like this. It looks okay. It's the basically all I did is I got out of the shower and I just kind of pat dried my hair with a towel and it ended up like this. And I don't know, when I usually just brush my hair straight back, which kind of makes it go poof, which makes my hair a lot taller than maybe is the best look for me. But this is kind of messy, but I don't know. What do you think of my hair? Maybe I'll wear a hat. I look terrible on hats, which is why I don't wear hats. But Zachary, you're looking good in your hats. So that's it for us. Molehill Mountain, episode 14 in the bag. Long damn show. We'll try to keep it to an hour next week. But that's what Nintendo does to you. It makes you gabby. So, all right, everyone. Thank you very much for watching us. Cecil, I'm sorry you missed most of the show, man. We'll see you next Saturday with episode 15. Take care, y'all.
All right. See ya.